What's up, everyone? Steve here with Climb the Pocket, back for another fantasy football video. Today we're going over top 12 running backs. Now, I know it's pretty early, but I like to dive into this stuff early, give you guys kind of an idea what the running back landscape is looking like so far going into the 2020 season. Let's all cross our fingers that the Roni virus goes away. Hope everyone's staying safe out there. Let's get into the video. So, starting off at number one, I think it's pretty consensus that Christian McCaffrey is going to go number one in most fantasy football drafts. Now, I can see some people's argument they might want to take Saquon Barkley or maybe like a Dalvin Cook, but Christian McCaffrey for the past couple years has really just shown us how good and dynamic he is if he's given the workload, and I don't see his workload going down all that much. Now, last year he finished as the RB1. I think we all know that's kind of why he's definitely at the top this year. Last year he was a top 3 pick, but this year I think he's going to be consensus number one in most fantasy football drafts. Last year, he had 2,400 all-purpose yards throughout the year. He caught 116 balls, went for 1,000 and 1,000, and had 19 total touchdowns. Now, that is a fantasy football superstar right there. Now, the difference, they obviously have a new head coach, and they have Teddy Bridgewater as quarterback now. Now, I think that's an upgrade from what they were working at quarterback last year. He was the number 2 overall fantasy scorer, just behind Lamar Jackson. So that's pretty, that's definitely a pretty eye-opening stat. Lamar Jackson had an MVP season, one of the best fantasy football seasons we've ever seen from a player and a quarterback, obviously. He was 64 points better than any other fantasy scorer not named, obviously, Lamar Jackson. And this is half PPR I'm going over. A good upside is that Bridgewater, in his career, has targeted or 20% of his targets have been running backs on his team. So I like to see him for another 100 receptions again, and I think it's pretty set in stone. He might lose a little bit of workload. I think the Panthers might draft in a running back just to take a little bit off of Christian McCaffrey, but there's no way that he's not going to be the focal point of their offense like they have been for years. Obviously, they have other people come to town. Robbie Anderson's in town. Curtis Samuel's still there. DJ Moore's still developing. I think it's going to be a pretty dynamic offense. I'm pretty excited to watch this one, but if I'm number one on the clock in my fantasy football draft, I'm taking Christian McCaffrey. Number 2, I have Saquon Barkley. Last year he finished as the RB10. He missed 3 games, and he was obviously dealing with injury and maybe a few more of those. So the important thing is the last 3 games he averaged 180 total yards per game and over 1.5 touchdowns per game. So those are the kind of numbers that he was looking at in 2018 when people took him early. Again, in 2019, he was looking at possibly being the number 1 overall pick. And if you took him, you kind of got burned. But on a per-game basis, he was actually really good. I like that Daniel Jones is obviously in his second year there. They have a new head coach, which I don't think is going to affect him very much because I think Saquon Barkley is just dynamic, and obviously he's a very big part of their offense. He's going to be worked in no matter what, and I think he's probably, next to Christian McCaffrey, the next best, maybe Alvin Kamara, but he's going to catch a lot of passes, and what he can do after the pass or after the catch is just amazing to watch. I'm really excited to watch him this year. They still have Darius Slayton, who's growing. They have Golden Tate, Evan Ingram, if he's back healthy. I think it's just going to help Saquon keep that offense dynamic and rolling. So Saquon Barkley, like I said, I wouldn't be upset if you took him number 1 overall. You really believed in him. If he has a season like he did in 2018 and maybe even a boost forward and that offense is better, I think that we can see Saquon Barkley get up and definitely into the top 3, but maybe the number 1 overall fantasy football running back. Number 3, we're going to the Minnesota Vikings running back, Dalvin Cook. Last year, he had a really, really good season. Obviously, wasn't able to finish the season once again. That's probably one of his only downsides is the injury risk. You obviously don't want to take too much risk here in the beginning of the draft, but I think Dalvin Cook, what he can get you on a week-to-week basis, he's going to win you a lot of weeks. Last year, he had 1,600 all-purpose yards. 53 catches, so that's pretty good, and he had 13 touchdowns. Obviously, Kevin Stefanski's gone, but they still have Bill O'Brien there, and what he's doing is, or not Bill O'Brien, Gary Kubiak, and no, it's Bill O'Brien. And he's a run game guru. He's definitely going to continue to give Dalvin Cook the ball, the rock, and Stephon Diggs is out of town now, so they're just going to have to target him even more. Obviously, I think the Vikings are probably going to add a receiver in the draft, but Dalvin Cook's going to continue to be a focal point of that offense. I like Alex Madison to be a little more worked in, but I like Dalvin Cook as that definitely that workhorse. He's going to continue to get a lot of work in that offense. I think Minnesota's offense will still be pretty good, so I like Dalvin Cook here at number 3. Number 4, a bounce back guy, Alvin Kamara, taken very high in leagues last year, and he burned you with an RB12 finish. Now, that's not awful, but when you take a guy third overall or something like that, he definitely burned you on return, investing a pick that early. Last year, he had 1,330 all-purpose yards. He caught 81 balls, which is amazing. He's a PPR dynamo, and I love him for that. But he only had 6 touchdowns. Coming off 18 touchdowns in 2018, that screams positive regression in the touchdown category for Alvin Kamara. I'd be pretty excited to take him here at number 4. Obviously, slightly a risk. Latavius Murray had a pretty good season last year, especially when Alvin Kamara wasn't in the lineup. So you like to think that it could be kind of a duo running back situation going on there. But I think Alvin Kamara is a focal point of that offense with Michael Thomas. They just brought in Emmanuel Sanders. Drew Brees, one of his last, not last seasons, but one of his last seasons coming up. And they've gotten close the last couple of years, but they're definitely going to want to go for that Super Bowl this year like they have the last couple of years. But I'm sure this season is going to have a lot of emphasis on that. Like I said, he battled injury last year, and I think just missing 2 games doesn't really write the script on how he was affected from that injury in other games that he played. So I like Alvin Kamara as a bounce back, and he's my number 4 running back. Number 5, I have Zeke Elliott. Last year, you took him very high, and he returned pretty much exactly where you drafted him. He was RB4 last year. He had 1,777 all-purpose yards, caught 54 balls, which is very good. We're maybe looking for a few more catches, especially in those PPR leagues, but pretty solid. And he had 14 touchdowns. Zeke kind of like in your league doesn't seem like a player that's going to win you every single week like Christian McCaffrey, but he's giving you that steady 20 points, going to rush for 100 yards when given the opportunity. And I'd like to see him used a little more on the goal line. I know they like to use Dak Prescott. He's a pretty dynamic quarterback. They like to kind of mix in. They have Amari Cooper there. They got him re-signed. I think the whole offense is going to... Last year, there was high expectations for the Cowboys, and I think this year they're going to take that step forward, and I think they're going to win the NFC East. Sorry, Eagles fans, but that's just what I see. I'm not a Cowboys guy, but I can see that happening. He's a rock-solid, very, very, very safe pick. Doesn't have any injury history, so no problem taking here at number 5. Absolutely no issue. He's going to be a solid starter in your lineup week in to week out. Number 6, we have Derrick Henry. 2019 finish, he was RB3. He was the NFL rushing champion. He had 1,746 all-purpose yards, only caught 18 balls. That's going to be his big downfall compared to all these other running backs. He is not involved in the passing game, and I do not think the Titans plan to get him involved in the passing game anymore. But he had 18 touchdowns last year, so he is franchise tagged. He's the focal point of this offense, and the Titans definitely look to get back to the AFC Championship while they have him franchised. I don't think they want to sign him to a long-term deal just because the investment in running back around the league has not, posed out to be a good investment. We've seen what happened with Todd Gurley and David Johnson and other running backs who've gotten paid highly. Hopefully Zeke Elliott can erase that curve. But Derrick Henry, he's going to need to repeat probably his 1,400 yards and the same amount of touchdowns to return value here. I think in the touchdown category, he can get close, maybe around like 15, 16 touchdowns. I think he can rush for that many yards again. So I don't really see him finishing outside the top 8 here. He's my number 6 running back just because I think the Titans finally figured out what they have in him and what they can use him and how they can use him to get them where they want to go, and that's the Super Bowl. And I think they're going to ride him into the ground all the way till they get there. He's a big power back, can play through the weather, and he can get in that deep run. So I like Derrick Henry here at number 6. And obviously you've seen my number 7 on the board, and that's Aaron Jones. Last year he had a very, very outlier season. Not outlier, but higher than we would expect, and he was running back too. He had 1,558 all-purpose yards. He caught 49 balls, which is pretty average, but not bad. He's definitely involved in the passing game, and he's actually very good in the passing game. He can go downfield, stretch the field. Aaron Rodgers can hit him on the slant route, and he's actually a pretty good receiver. But the outlier stat here is 19 touchdowns. He had 19 touchdowns last year. I do not really see that happening again. I think he could get somewhere in the 14 to 15 range if everything goes right, and hopefully it does, because like I said, I'm a Packers fan. But with Matt LaFleur there, it's their second year in the offense, so I like to see him continue to use Aaron Jones the way he used him last year. Jamal Williams still looms around, and they like to use Jamal Williams. I like Jamal Williams. I like the mix of running back depth on that team, but for fantasy football, we definitely like a workhorse. But I think what Aaron Jones is able to do, he's able to definitely win you a lot of weeks. But the problem here is he's got a lot of boom weeks, but he has a lot of bust weeks where he can get like less than 5 points out of nowhere. he might get you 35 points one week, but then 5 points the next week. And you definitely want consistency in fantasy football, especially when you're taking a guy in the first round. So he's slightly risky here, but I like the talent, and I like him to get back to a top 6 finish this year. Even though he's my number 7, I think he can get to top 6. So Aaron Jones, my number 7 running back. Nick Chubb is my number 8 running back. He finished as RB7 last year. He was second in NFL in rushing. He had 1,772 all-purpose yards. He caught 36 balls, and he had 8 touchdowns. Now, in the touchdown category, he had plenty of goal line opportunities that he did not execute, get into the end zone. I blame a lot of that on the Browns O-line and just the scheme itself. I think the Browns try to make Baker Mayfield something he's not and like to put the ball in his hands. But I remember watching one game where they ran the ball 7 times in a row from the goal line because of a penalty, and Nick Chubb didn't get in. He got every opportunity, did not get in the end zone. Very frustrating to watch as a Nick Chubb owner. But I think if they can make improvements to the offensive line, the scheme is improved. I think they're going to continue to use Nick Chubb. He's an incredible talent. The one thing that looms is Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt was there. Once he came back, he was pretty much all of the passing game. Nick Chubb barely caught any balls after that. And even Kareem Hunt started to steal some goal line work. So that is kind of definitely, tough to handle when you're taking a guy this high. But I think his overall work just in the run game and the talent alone, he's going to finish again with 1,500 yards, rushing yards, and hopefully more touchdowns. So the touchdowns is what I'm banking on. If he can get more than 8, I think he can definitely repeat his RB7 finish. I love Nick Chubb. My number 9 running back is Joe Mixon for the Cincinnati Bengals. Last year he finished RB13, and if you were 8 games through the season, you'd be like, no way Joe Mixon's finishing as the RB13. He actually finished the season with 1,400 all-purpose yards. He caught 35 balls, and he had 8 touchdowns. I think that Joe Mixon is a better pass catcher than the Bengals will allow him to be a part of the pass game. Like, it doesn't really make sense to me. I think he's a really good, just all-around player. I think he'd be a 3-down back. But for some reason, they definitely like to keep Gio Bernard still in the offense for whatever reason. He's a tenured player on the Bengals, a veteran, and they like what he can do in the pass game, so they continue to throw him out there. And no doubt, Gio Bernard's a good replacement whenever Joe Mixon's like injured or whatnot. And in Joe Mixon has had his injury history in his first few years in the league. He's been out a few games. But I don't really see Gio Bernard being better than Joe Mixon, besides giving him a breather every once in a while. I don't think there's any need to take Joe Mixon off the field on 3rd down if Joe Mixon, he's fresh and ready to go, because I think he's just a much better player than Gio Bernard. I think the Bengals are going to take Joe Burrow number 1 overall, and I think most people think that. And I think that's going to be good for Mixon just because of whatever they had going on quarterback last year with their backup quarterback, Andy Dalton kind of not being good, and just their offensive linemen being injured and whatnot. It was just a bad setup for Mixon overall. And when we see him on the field playing with all of the assets that he needs that surround him to make him good, he's one of the best running backs in the league. I can see Joe Mixon finishing as the RB3. Definitely, he's the talent. He's the real deal in the NFL. If he's given the opportunity, Jonah Williams is back. Maybe they draft another offensive lineman in round 2. I think if they make that O-line better and Joe Burrow is better than a normal rookie quarterback, it's to start from week 1. I think he could be really good. And I like Joe Mixon here at the end of the first round at pick number 9. If you can kind of lock him with another good running back to kind of secure that position, or a top tier wide receiver in round 2, I think you're going to be happy with your start here at the turn. The last 3 games of the season, he averaged 125 yards a game. So not like Saquon, but 125 yards a game is a lot of yards. 3 of his 5 touchdowns on the ground were in the last 4 games. So I'm pretty excited that he ended the season very well. Now, maybe the opponents weren't so good, but Joe Mixon, he finished strong, similar to Saquon. I can see them both rolling out of the gates, and Joe Mixon being a really good pick next year. My number 10 running back, Austin Ekeler. Melvin Gordon is gone, and Austin Ekeler is in town. He is signed last year. He finished the RB6. Obviously, a lot of that came from the beginning of the season before Melvin Gordon came back. Austin Ekeler was winning your league. He was the top running back, or he's RB2 behind Christian McCaffrey most of the season, and he is electric to watch. I love watching Austin Ekeler play football. He had 92 catches last year. He had over 1,500 all-purpose yards and scored 11 touchdowns, 8 of those being in the pass game. Now, obviously, Phil Rivers is gone, and Phil Rivers loves to throw to his running backs. He even loves to throw to Melvin Gordon. He threw to his running backs all day long. But whoever they bring in, and they have Tyrod Taylor right now. We'll see if they decide to sign like Cam or draft Justin Herbert and start him eventually. But I think they can't go away from using Austin Ekeler in the pass game. I like to see him kind of like an Alvin Kamara-like role, very involved in the pass game, but also able to run between the line. And like I said, Austin Ekeler is very electric to watch. I love him. And we haven't seen him in a full workload all season long to see if he can hold up injury-wise. Let's cross our fingers he can, because I'd be very happy with a guy like Austin Ekeler on my team if he's giving me the production he did in the first 8 weeks of the season that he did last year. My number 11 running back, Josh Jacobs for the Las Vegas Raiders. Josh Jacobs last year finished as RB18 as a rookie. He missed 3 games in 2019, so I think if he played those games, he'd probably be closer up to like RB13, and that's a very, very promising start to a career and a really good fantasy football season. He had 1,300 all-purpose yards, like I said, in just 16 games. He had 20 catches. That's going to be a downfall for him. I think they need to involve Josh Jacobs in the pass game a little more. He did some of that at Alabama, and I think he can do that. They just have Jalen Richard. They like to use him, similar to like the Packers with Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams. They kind of like to bring another back in just to kind of be a change of pace and playing it on third down. I think Josh Jacobs will continue to grow in this league. I think he can go for over 1,500 all-purpose yards and over 10 touchdowns. He's going to be a fine first-round fantasy football pick. So I'm very excited to draft Josh Jacobs. And when we go on to number 12, I have slated in here Todd Gurley for the Atlanta Falcons. They got rid of Devonta Freeman, and they brought in Todd Gurley, old Todd Gurley apparently. Last year he finished as RB14, and we were kind of all expecting that he was going to fall off from like that RB1 finish he had the year before because of like the knee issues that he was having. And he didn't really, injury-wise, it didn't really hold him back. I think he missed 1 game only. So it really wasn't a big deal, the injury, but they definitely held back on his workload. He only had 1,000 all-purpose yards last year, 1,064 if you want to give him that little bit of credit. And he caught 31 balls, but he had 14 touchdowns. So really what gave him his RB14 finish was the 14 touchdowns. His new team in Atlanta, there's 60% of the running back snaps are rushing attempts freed up with Devonta Freeman gone. So Devonta Freeman was a big part of that offense. We saw him in patches last year able to do a lot in that offense, but not very consistent. Devonta Freeman's kind of been falling off. He hasn't signed with the team yet, so we'll see where he goes. But Todd Gurley here, he's the oldest running back of the group. You can see he's 26 listed here, along with Derrick Henry. These ages are when the season starts, how old they will be. So he's only on a 1-year deal, so like the Falcons could draft another running back and maybe phase him in and phase Todd Gurley out and then just not bring back Todd Gurley next year. And that's a very high possibility. So when it comes to number 12 here, it's kind of like pick and choose because obviously there's some other guys like Leonard Fournette, Miles Sanders, Kenyon Drake. Those guys I would kind of put all the same value. And maybe about in a few weeks from now or even when the season starts or maybe more this summer, I'll switch around and maybe add like Kenyon Drake and Miles Sanders up here at number 12 because I'm actually a big fan of Kenyon Drake. I like what he was able to do in the offense last year, especially when David Johnson was phased out. They brought in Kenyon Drake and he was kind of like the light that offense needed and he fit perfectly in that offense. And with Kyler Murray like poised to progress even more, a lot of people are taking him quarterback 3 overall. I think this offense is going to be a lot better than it was in past seasons. So I love Kenyon Drake and Miles Sanders, a rookie sleeper, not sleeper, but a sleeper to be a top 5 running back if he's given the opportunity. I'm not really a fan of Philly running backs in fantasy football. They usually kind of spread the ball out a lot more. So we'll see what happens there. But I think Miles Sanders has a lot of upside. And obviously Leo Fournette, he was involved in the pass game a lot last year and actually didn't battle injury that much at all. In past seasons, that's been the reason you really want to stay away from it. His injury bug has just couldn't seem to go away. But I like Leo Fournette this year. I think he's going to be a fine pick. A good RB1 to take in the second draft or the second round. If you're able to get another running back in the first round, go running back, that'd be a really, really good running back combination there. Or if you got like a DeAndre Hopkins or Michael Thomas in round 1 and were able to land one of these honorable mention running backs in round 2, I think you'd be pretty happy with them as your RB1. So anyway, guys, that's my top 12 running backs for 2020. Obviously, it's only April 3rd. The draft hasn't happened. Maybe Jonathan Taylor scoots up here or DeAndre Swift. who knows, depending on what team they go to and what we can expect their workload to be. But hey, drop a comment. Let me know if you think I got anything wrong. Maybe give me your top 12 running backs. We're going to come back with another video coming up here soon for our top 12 wide receivers for 2020. But until then, everyone stay safe out there. Let's try to defeat this Roni virus before it gets too bad. It obviously is already progressing a lot, but if it affects our NFL season, that's going to really hit deep down to a lot of us fantasy football fans and just football fans in general. I don't know what I would do if we didn't have the NFL season. So everyone keep your hopes high and let's defeat this thing. Peace.